Welcome to Transcendent Psych. I'm doing a short series, well, maybe short, called The 10 Love Laws Loving with Power. Today, we're looking at law number 1, which is to start with you, to start with yourself, using something I'm calling micro compassions. We're our own constant critic most of the time. If we criticized our neighbors, as much as we criticize ourselves, they would lose patience with us. Or if someone around us criticizes as much as we criticize ourselves, we would soon lose patience with them. And yet somehow we put up with our own constant self-criticism. And it kind of works in a constant drip, drip, drip fashion. So, I'm used to working with lots of people in my work, and it's a constant part of the human condition. People find themselves being self-critical, and it causes them to lose confidence in themselves. To solve this problem, we need to do kind of the opposite, right? We've got this constant drip, drip, drip of micro criticisms. What we need instead is to counterbalance that with a constant drip, drip, drip of micro compassions. I want you to imagine for a moment two different coaches. Let's imagine you're training for some athletic thing, right? And you've got two coaches. One coach is really critical. And by that, it's like they're giving you feedback, but it's constantly trying to sort of undermine your efforts. That wasn't good enough. You done that again? Really? Come on, that's useless. That's no good. Versus a different kind of coach who they want improvement for you, but they're interested in you primarily, not just in the performance. And they are a compassionate coach, and they're like, okay, yeah, okay, that wasn't as great as you wanted it to be, but come on, you've got this. You can do it. You can do it. I believe in you. That was just maybe put that down to that was a bad experience that time, but pick yourself up again. You can do this. Now notice those two different coaches, neither of them are being soft, right? The second coach that's being compassionate is interested in you doing well and not necessarily settling for second best, but it's the tone. The tone is very different. It's interesting. The word for criticism has Greek origins, and in the Greek it's the word krinein, which in its origins has this idea of separation, separating out. It's kind of like that ability we have of being able to analyze things, to kind of go, yeah, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, that's okay, that's useful, that's not useful. It's that critical faculty, and it's important. We need it. It's particularly useful for dealing with things, okay? But it's not so helpful in treating ourselves as an object, treating ourselves as things simply to be manipulated, or indeed other people. I'll do a follow-on video talking about compassion, maybe micro compassions to other people. But it's really hard to show compassion to others if we've not started by learning how to do it to ourselves. So yes, we've got this capacity, this kind of analytical, critical capacity that we can apply to things that we often apply to ourselves. Good, bad, good, bad. It's very digital very often. It's very sort of black and white in its thinking. So it's very common to hear people say, well, I got it all wrong. I got it, I made a real mess of it. I made, actually, when you look at what people often do, it's like, yeah, some of it might not have been quite as good as they wanted it to be. It could be some improvements, but there were some good aspects about what they did, right? Or people rubbish themselves completely. I'm rubbish, I'm no good, kind of that negative self-talk. It's just really these kind of big global attributions of good or bad to ourselves are actually usually inaccurate anyway. So we could compare this kind of approach, this kind of separating out approach of the brain sometimes, with the approach of compassion. The compassion, I think, to some extent, yes, it's connected to the brain, but it's also connected to the heart. It's got this kind of warmth to it. It's got a kind of, it comes with courage often, but it's got a warmth feeling to it. I want to just mention briefly the work of Ian McGilchrist, who's done a lot of work on brain lateralization. He's a psychiatrist, fellow of the Royal Society. And he says, forget everything you heard in the 1990s, 1980s about brain lateralization. And he says, kind of jokingly, actually, listen to me, because this has kind of been his life's work. And there really are differences in the way the different hemispheres of the brain look at the world. And one of the things, and he's shown like thousands of papers based on evidence behind his work. His two big works are The Master and His Emissary. Just looking over there because I've got it on my shelf. The Master and His Emissary, which is a book that's yay thick, full of evidence, really interesting anecdotes and stories, and another triple volume tome, which is huge, which I've got on Kindle, which is called The Matter with Things. Again, both very fascinating works if you're interested. Anyway, one of the things he points out is that the left hemisphere has this capacity and this proclivity to never really be happy with imperfection. So he says, for example, if you look at the way the left hemisphere will tend, if it dominates, tend to want to draw things out, it much prefers a straight line to a curve. He says, interestingly, that it prefers shapes that are straight and tall, which is interesting when you think of the way we design modern buildings. There's a move away from the natural and the holistic as culture gets dominated by the left hemisphere. This is part of Ian McGilchrist's big themes. Left hemisphere prefers what is static, what is, kind of perfect, what is kind of straight, completely ordered, abstract, non-living, static. The right hemisphere prefers much more the holistic picture, the living, the moving, the dynamic, what's in flow. And of course, he points out that the left hemisphere is particularly specialized in mammals, including birds, for manipulating the world. It's a utilization tool for control, and it's interested in tiny details, but it often loses the big picture. And you'll see that in people, for example, that have right hemispheric strokes, where the left hemisphere is now left in charge, and the way they draw pictures and perceive the world is skewed by those tendencies. So I would just frame what I'm saying here about criticism in that way, to some extent, that it might be, I don't know, I'm not Ian McGilchrist, I'm not an expert in brain lateralization, but it might be a proclivity of a more dominant way of thinking of the left hemisphere to be uncomfortable with sort of imperfections. Okay. Anyhow, one of the things that he talks about is, for example, beauty. Like, if we look at the Japanese art of kintsugi, so it's those when they make those pots and the pot is shattered or broken, and then it's repaired using gold. So you end up with these beautiful kind of gold seams through the pot. The pot is actually more beautiful in its imperfections and its repairs than it would have been if it was just a straight pot, right? So I think that's interesting in terms of, can we appreciate ourselves and the beauty of ourselves and the beauty of the world with that sort of incompleteness? Beauty's never really a kind of rigid linear thing. We usually kind of, when we look at things, actually there's got to be a sort of incompleteness for things to actually be beautiful, and we see that obviously everywhere writ large in nature. So the critical capacities, I think, always live with us, always criticizing, always dividing the world out, dividing individuals, dividing society out, good, bad, judging constantly all the time. It's a useful category and useful skill for managing things, but it causes all sorts of problems when it comes to relationships and relationships with ourselves. So yeah, I'm not rejecting the critical capacity. It's really useful in a utilitarian way, but not in a relational way, not in relating to ourselves or others. To do that well, to relate to ourselves well, and to relate to others well, we're going to need some different skills. And I think compassion gets a bad rap because often it's seen as a sort of weakness. And yet, Paul Gilbert, who writes a lot on compassion-focused therapy, makes the point, actually, what is the force that takes a firefighter into a burning building if it's not compassion? Compassion is a courageous mover. It's something that allows us to overcome our fears and and our kind of small preoccupations. And it's interesting, the word courage, courage in French, comes from the etymology of the French cœur, meaning the heart, and back into Latin, cor. So I think there's something about compassion that's linked to courage and coming down into the heart as the center of good intent and goodwill. And there will be emotion attached to that, but it's about good intent and goodwill. So without any further ado, let me move on to how we might think about practicing micro compassions. Because you know what? I say micro compassions because just being compassionate to ourselves on a large scale as a kind of one-off, right, that's it, I've done it, I'm now compassionate to myself, doesn't work. We're constantly faced with that. Maybe it's left hemisphere. Ian McGilchrist will correct me on that. But wherever it stems from in the brain, that constant critical voice is a drip, drip, drip thing. If we're going to counterbalance it, because it's not going away, if we're going to counterbalance it, we're going to need to have a practice of drip, drip, drip micro compassions. So let's think about how we do that. So first thing I think we need to do is we need to have lots of them, often in small doses. Again, that drip, drip, drip of compassion. So it's about catching ourselves at regular intervals. And you can do that like this. So what I would suggest, you could try it with me right now, is pause regularly through your day. So let's do it now. Pause. Just focus your attention on your heart. It could be the physical location of your heart and the emotion of your heart. But go at a slightly deeper, more symbolic level as well. Go into the heart as the place of intention, of goodwill, of good intent. And now elicit the image of someone or something that you feel compassion towards, that you care about. And that isn't always the closest people to us for some people. Relationships can be complex. It might be easier to think of perhaps a child when they were young, when your caregiving capacities were fully drawn out. It might be for a pet or another loved person. And just get in touch with that feeling, but not just that feeling, that intent in the core of you. I'm tapping my heart while I'm saying this, just to, you can't see, that's what I'm trying to draw my attention to. As you get in touch with that feeling, however weak or strong, now just begin to turn that intention and that feeling towards yourself. And maybe add some words or thoughts to it, said gently in a soothing way, like that positive coach that's got your back. Okay, Kristin Neff, who writes a lot about self-compassion, says this. So we start by maybe acknowledging the toughness of the situation we're facing. Often we write things off and just go, that's not really tough. Everybody has that. Actually, that's the point. I'm going to come on to that in a second. So hold on to that feeling. It might be just a small thing. Someone said something that's annoying or hurtful to you. You might just come to that place of compassion and that positive intent towards yourself, elicited by someone or something you care about. And just perhaps say the words, that's tough. That's tough. So you're just giving yourself permission to acknowledge that it's okay to be kind to myself and that I'm going through something that was tough there. Second step is just acknowledge that it is human to suffer. So it's not kind of woe is me, I'm the only person. It's not like that. It's like, no, I'm human, and it's human to suffer in these ways. And then you want to just give yourself maybe just some physical touch. And that could be done in all sorts of different ways. It might be, some people like to put just their hand over their heart, just like you might do to a child that needs comforting. Okay, it's okay. It might be you want to do it in a slightly stronger way, if that feels a bit too kind of nesh for you. Okay, then you might want to go kind of like, it's all right, buddy, you got it, it's all right. Okay, it might be it's okay. Keep going. Just a bit of physical touch that's soothing, yeah? And that's it. It's simple. It's just those three elements, okay? Acknowledging, giving yourself permission to be kind to yourself, acknowledging that it's human to suffer, and then giving yourself just a small gesture or physical soothing touch in a way that feels okay for you. And you can do this throughout the day. Maybe make a project of this and practice this for a whole day, doing this maybe kind of once an hour, but set a reminder. And one of the things you might notice is just how often you're in a different space, that you are being critical to yourself or just dismissing your own human suffering. It is actually difficult being human. We suffer in all sorts of small ways all the time. And this isn't about a pity party. It's not about, kind of thinking of ourselves as weak or fragile or victims or something like that. This is just about going, actually, it's human. It's an existential thing. It's human to suffer. And we can meet ourselves with some compassion. And there is strength, I think, in that compassion. And it gives us resilience. It enables us to keep going. And it enables us to then extend that kindness. We're more likely to extend that kindness to others. So, and that might help you give yourself permission to do it, because actually this is going to make me someone that's easier to be around in the world and able then to show up for other people, which I will talk about in the next video. So please tune in for the next one. If you are not subscribed already, please urge you to subscribe, because that really helps on our on algorithms, and it's a compassionate thing to do, and it will allow you to get further notifications. Also, please do put a comment if you are wanting to try this, or you think this could be improved in any way. Do add a comment, or just any comment you want to make, and pop a like on here as well, because that is helpful if you enjoyed this or benefited from it in any way. So go forth and have a self-compassionate day.